second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's have the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, our agenda tonight is basically for us to have a chance to get to know you folks a little bit, so we're looking forward to that. The way that the evening is gonna go is we're gonna start, I'm gonna chat a little to you about the position of being a school board member, but beyond that, after that, we're gonna start with each person having 2 minutes to introduce themselves a little bit, tell us a little bit about you. And then we have, I think we have 6 questions. 5 questions that we're gonna go through, giving each of you a chance to ask each of those questions. Then after that, we'll give you each a chance to summarize any other thoughts that you have or things that you didn't get a chance to share with us at the end. And we will draw names as to who goes first, both for the,
Well, we'll draw it the initial order and then we'll just rotate through.
so everybody will have a chance to be the first on a question or the first on an introduction, and people will have a chance to ponder it while the other person has a chance to talk. Let me, before we go on to the drawing the names, just a quick sense of what we as a board are looking for. We're sad that we lost Kelly, and I shared with people Tuesday night that it's very exciting. Kelly got a very fancy grant for $1.5 million or something like that, the biggest grant Canisius has ever gotten for an educational grant, I think, to study what they call the Justice Program, I think is the name of their program, and it's she and 2 other people focusing on teaching math teachers how to teach special ed kids math that much better, which is very exciting. So we've asked Kelly to please come back and help us write a few grants, because if we head into the next budget climate, we could use a few extra $1.5 million. But what we're looking for now, obviously, is a replacement for Kelly. We obviously want someone who cares a lot about the school system and about the town and about the people that we work with, the students and the families and all of our citizens in this town. We want someone who has and can make the time to be involved in the board, which involves not only having board meetings in the evening. We have, sort of once a month, but it often ends up being twice a month, and sometimes it ends up being once a week, and those meetings can be as short as an hour or as long as 2 or 3 hours. We would like to think that this board member might be able to be someone who can take advantage of all the wonderful things our schools have to offer, get to that many more games and concerts and things like that if possible. There are committees that we're involved with in the board, committees on special ed, committees on transportation, committees on budget and finance, committees on, and so each person does indeed tend to sign up for 1 or 2 committees. And those sometimes take place during the day, often at the end of the day, because it's, people who are trying to get home from work a little bit early to get to them, but it is the teachers and the academic folks who are here finishing up their day. We're looking for someone who can hopefully work with this sort of shabby-looking group that we've got here, because as a board, you really want to work as much as possible together, and we really need that working together both with us and also with the administration and with the superintendent. So that concept of working as a member of the team is critical. Are those pretty much the things that we're thinking in terms of?
Yes, covered that well.
So that's what we're looking for. So beyond that, we're very excited to have you all here. We did have 13 people who initially expressed an interest. I think when a couple of people realized that that we weren't desperately looking for the one and only who would do it, a couple of people did say, you know what, this might be somebody else's opportunity this year, and it may not be what I need to do this year. We now have, I think, 11 people who are continuing to express an interest. 4 of them spoke with us the other night. 10?
10, yeah.
10? 4 of them spoke with us the other night, and there you are. You're the 6 of you tonight. So we're going to each be sort of trying to figure out, after we have the opportunity to get to know you all, how in the world we figure out who we choose. It's a very tricky thing to do, but help us out. And that person will then indeed be on the board between now and the spring. At election time, that person's position will be open for election. So, there will be 3 positions open for election in the spring. That pretty much?
That's it?
Thank you, Ron.
Okay. Well, like Joan said, 2 minutes for the opening statement, 3 minutes for each question. And I have my little signs here, so if you're getting close, this wasn't a real problem the other night, but when you get to 10 seconds. I did manage to scrounge up a yellow piece of paper and a red piece of paper, which is a high-end commodity around here. So, and then we'll rotate, so whoever was first in the first round will be last in the second, and we'll rotate it. It was easier to keep track of before. It may take me a little time to break down who's one and who's two. So everybody gets a chance to be first, and everybody gets a chance to be last. So I'm going to draw names now, to see who gets to go first. Like my hands are shaking. Harold.
Okay, here goes.
No,
Okay,
no,
we're
we're gonna
figure
go,
out who's
do them
next
all
first.
first.
You're going off.
Why not?
Okay, thank you.
Gary, you're number 2. Bob. Dan, number 4. Would've been a lot easier if they all came out in order.
You really squished those up.
Yeah, I did. I want to be able to shake them. Laura? These
Was I 5? Is that what number?
Laura's 4, and Chuck,
No, she's 5.
or 5, and Chuck is 6, I'm sorry. So, whenever you're ready, Harold, I'll start my little clock.
The first thing for me to mention in getting to know me is that I am a graduate of Hamburg High School. I'm very indebted to the school system because it started me on my way to my career. I had excellent guidance counselor, Elizabeth Buell at the time, and the high school librarian are the ones who got me my full tuition scholarship at St. Lawrence. The high school librarian had a degree from St. Lawrence. The interesting side point to that is that when I had difficulty with one subject in my junior year and I talked with her, I said, will this affect my scholarship? She said, absolutely not. I completely control it. It was her father's scholarship that had been awarded to me. The second thing I'd like to mention with you is my older sister, Betty, was school lunch director for 28 years in the school system. And she also was president of the credit union for 10 years. My twin sister, Helen, taught 27 years at the elementary level in the Hamburg school system. And one of those years, she was president of HTA, and she said she would never have that assignment again in her whole life. It's the year that they introduced the Taylor Bill, and if the teachers had struck, which they almost did, she would have gone to jail. The second thing, the major thing for me to bring up is that I did run, as Matt knows, for the board 4 years ago. He obviously won since he's on that side of the table from me over here. But I did get over 700 votes, so somewhere out there, there is a constituency waiting to be tapped again. I've been a budget ambassador for 4 years. The last thing for me to mention along that line is that I currently am on the Hamburg Finance Academy Advisory Board, and yesterday I accepted responsibility for chairing the governance committee, which is responsible for updating the bylaws for the board. The board is a 501 organization, so it's fine.
I'm sorry.
For the whole 30 seconds, the whole 2 minutes?
Yep.
Oh, Lordy.
Sorry.
Well, I hope you know me now. If you don't know anything else about me, that qualifies me for the board.
Okay, Gary?
Gary Klump. I've been a Hamburg resident here for the past 15 years. I've got 2 boys. One's in college. He's gone through the ranks of the school system here in Hamburg. He's in Fredonia State College. I've got one now in the middle school. He's now an 8th grader. And like this gentleman over here to my right, as he so proudly said, I am also very, very indebted to the school system here in Hamburg. I've done a lot of things with the Hamburg School District regarding volunteerism, coaching, working on programs from cultural, academic, in-school teaching, as I was a former teacher back in Atlanta, Georgia, and also just helping out with just basic, what they call the, I think it's called the Glacier Program. It's in the town of Hamburg with the young boys and girls who have a problem with motor skills and academic skills. I've been doing that with the town of Hamburg as well. I'm not gonna bore you with all my credits. The only thing is that I'm a graduate of the University of Buffalo. I've lived in about 6 different states, raised in 8 different states, so I'm kind of a different kind of pedigree. But I've known with that kind of cross-assimily that I see what needs to be done when it comes to accepting, adapting, and adjusting, and what needs to be done as far as with the district, because I've been in 7 districts myself growing up as a school, in school systems. I ran for this position back in May, lost by 30 votes, and I'm back at it again. The bottom line is this: I know the job can be done, and I'm the man for the job. I believe in one thing, and that is the students, taxpayers, teachers.
Bob?
Hello, everyone. I see you have a tough job here, and I read in the paper the other night that you had a good interview crew the other night too, based on the names I saw. So thanks for allowing us to serve the board, or have an opportunity to do that. My name is Bob Madden. I've been in the district for about 13 years. I've been involved in the school budget ambassador group for 4 with Harold. And also for the past 3 on the Finance Academy board, on the advisory board with Harold as well. So I have some experience in understanding a little bit about how the district is run. I have 3 kids that have used the system of Hamburg. 1 graduated this past year. I've got 2 more in the district now. I think it's important that we find some fresh ideas that can come to the board and help with the challenges lying ahead of running a district with reduced expenses and increasing costs with our overall population declining. So whoever sits on that board is going to have a challenge on their hands, and I hope that I can be one to bring some good ideas to help manage that. Thanks.
My name is Dana Lamb, and I actually grew up in Montana and went to the University of North Dakota, where I met my husband, who is from Springville, and we moved to Hamburg. I've been here probably about 12 years in January. I am a software engineering manager at a company called Dialogic in Gettsville, where I manage a team of 10 software engineers, and my passion is to create strength-based teams, meaning find people's strengths, understand what their passions are, what they love to do, and give them that work to do it. I have a 7-year-old daughter who's at Armory Elementary, and we love it there. I have paid attention to her strengths too. She's an auditory learner, so I try and do whatever I can to teach her by talking to her about it. And in fact, I think the best way to solve problems is to communicate. I think people don't talk enough. I think we don't listen enough. And as a part of any board, I sat on my church's board for 6 years, and the biggest skill that I can bring is to be able to listen, collect data, collect facts, and talk to people, and make good decisions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura here. I also am a graduate of Hamburg Central, as is my husband. I come from a long line of teachers and psychologists, and swore when I went to college I was not going to go into teaching, but did. So I'm a former elementary teacher and special ed teacher. My husband and I moved away for a while and came back to the area in order to raise our kids in Hamburg. We have 6 children. They are at Hamburg High, Hamburg Middle, and Union Pleasant. They range in age from 17 to 6. I have kids who have had the wonderful experiences of being in AP classes, and I have two that have special needs. I feel like I've been on all ends of the spectrum, and I am tremendously grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight. I think it speaks volumes of our community that you had, 13 people that wanted to step forward and become a part of the board. I think we have passionate teachers, excellent administrators, a strong board, and hopefully we can get everybody working together to deal with what's going on in the state.
I want to thank you, the board, for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm originally from Alden. I graduated from Alden High School, not a Hamburg graduate. I started my education at Niagara Community College and furthered it to Canisius College, where I received a bachelor's in physical education. I also received a master's of science in special education from Buffalo State College, and then received a second master's from Niagara University in administration and supervision. And I'm currently 3 classes away from my master's of science in physical education from Canisius. During college, I also wrestled and played football at Niagara Community College and Canisius College. My work experience, I worked at the Stanley Falk School from 95 to 97, teaching special education to emotionally disturbed students throughout Western New York who were sent there by various districts. Then I taught at Lewiston Porter Health, and I was an assistant principal for a year at Lewiston Porter as well, from 97 to 2000. I had what I would consider to this day the best job of my life, from 2000 to 2003, where I taught K-2 phys ed at Hamburg, at Union Pleasant. And I currently am a tenured physical education teacher at Buffalo Public Schools. I live in Hamburg with my fiance, Terry Vogler, who's a teacher at Union Pleasant, and I've been a resident of Hamburg for about the past 5 years. Thank you.
We're going to begin the questions. It's 3 minutes for each question. So, and then Gary, you're first up. And I believe Tom's asking first.
Discuss what you believe are the 3 most important issues the district is facing in the 2011-12 school year and beyond, and why those issues are important.
3 issues that I can tell you right now. Tom, thank you very much for asking the question, because I remember the question that was asked back in May. I truly believe that we've got an issue with class sizes, ratio of teachers to classes. Number 2, I believe there's a situation we need to empower teachers, okay? When it comes to resources we already have, and utilize their skills. And number 3, cut administrative costs wherever we can. And let me just reiterate the first one, when it comes to utilize resources, I should say class sizes. I know that especially now we've got integration with some special ed students that have come into the middle ranks of elementary schools. My son was part of that with a young man that I was one of his tutors back in the Boston Valley Elementary School. So I know that there's needs to make sure we have hands-on treatment with these certain teachers that are skilled, or should I say aides who are skilled to make sure they adapt. And we shouldn't lose that. That's first and foremost. Number 2, empower the teachers. We have resources already there. The problem is, I think a lot of them feel they're really kind of handcuffed when it comes down to what they can, when they cannot do. The problem is, if it's not going to be a focus point where the teachers are allowed to use their skills, resources, and what they have is expansive knowledge, and they feel they have to go by a guideline just because they got to make sure a student has to pass an SAT or an ACT, we've got problems. We need to broaden the horizon. We need to make sure these students understand 2 things. 1, there's life beyond the school, life beyond the blackboard. There's experiences outside the classroom. And many of these teachers have great ideas, great knowledge, and great resources, not just from the inside the school's classroom, but out friends, families that can bring things that can actually empower these kids. And that's the bottom line, empower these students to utilize what they know, what they have, to become better citizens, not just students. It's not just a blackboard, it's not just a test. It's about life skill experiences. And number 3, administrative costs. What I'm talking about, I'm not talking about going across the line and cutting salaries. No, that's not the point. The bottom line is this: we know we're in an economic crunch. We know that the teachers have contracts, The administration has contracts, I believe we just settled one, we just settled the budget, and we keep on going up and up and up as far as increments. The bottom line is, these teachers have to realize one thing, they have the power to be able to utilize what they have without the fear factor of losing a salary structure. They want to be taken care of, and I understand that. But the administrators, maybe some of these things, do we really need all these administrative costs? Do we really need to have all this, I'll say duplication of work, duplicitous of work? That's my bottom line.
Tom, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Discuss what you believe are the three most important issues the district is facing in the 2011-12 school year and beyond, and why these issues are important.
Okay. I believe that the three challenges that we're facing now and heading forward into the future, I think one of the primary problems we have is rising costs to run the district. We put a bond issue into this past year to add a lot of money to the buildings because our buildings are need help. And so, along with, managing that debt, our labor costs are going up because of the contracts we have in place, and I'm not sure you can do really much about that. And we're faced with a reduction in revenue from the state, having a tax cap with, I think roughly so that's number two is the tax cap. The first is the rising costs, and then the reduction, and second is the reduction in revenue. And the third is the expectations that our children rightfully deserve a 21st century education, but we're using 20th century standards and are limited by what we have to teach them. Somebody mentioned earlier about having to teach people just to pass the curriculum tests that we're required to teach by. The tax cap, though, is of particular concern because if 45% of our district comes from the tax levy, and we were allowed 2% limit on our tax levy, that means it's going to be less than 1% increase in revenue from our tax levy that we can generate. And having a 1% increase isn't going to doesn't do a whole lot to help us. So I really think, and being involved in the budget investors really opened my eyes with understanding more how the district operates. I didn't have a clue about it 5 years ago. Even the first year going through it, participating in those meetings, a lot of that went over my head because there's terms and nomenclature that you use in running a district that we don't use in the real world. So number one, I think, is the challenges we have with rising costs, the tax cap, and the limitations we have with the ability of our teachers to be creative about teaching kids. Thank you.
My first one is, I think it's important to get everybody focused on the same goal so that the small amount of money that we have, we can spend wisely. And everybody's working towards a good education for our kids. And we only have a limited number of dollars to spend. And if we all focus on getting on the education part, on a safe environment, I think we can make that money go a lot further than if we have 12 different groups going 12 different ways, all with the same money. I think respect for people across the board is huge. You hear all of in the news, Buffalo made the media for bullying. I think we need to teach kids to respect each other, to respect adults, to respect their peers, to respect their teachers. Respect will take us so far in this world. And the last one, I think, is communication with the community. I think you guys have had a rough year, and you're getting a bad rap for it. And if we just start talking and opening up our hearts and in our ears to hear what the community has to say and to let them hear what we have to say. I think that makes a big difference in understanding each other, in the ability to solve problems, to identify what real problems need to be solved. I think sometimes we get to the he said, she said, or us versus them, and that doesn't get us anywhere. I think when we can really start having honest, open, frank discussions, we can really start solving problems. Thank you.
If I had to list three, I would say, obviously, I agree with a lot of what's been said about the state. I'm not a financial guru, I've been raising children, but I know that a school board can't operate like our country can on a deficit. I know that we have to make ends meet, and that is obviously one of the biggest issues that's facing our district, and there's huge changes that are going to have to be made, and they're not going to be able to make everybody happy. I also feel that the economy as a whole, we maybe underestimate how much that is affecting families in Hamburg. We have a lot of families where parents have lost jobs, parents are working 2 and 3 jobs, and that's affecting our kids. It's not just, we're talking about test scores, it's not just what's going on in the schools, it's what's going on in the country as a whole. And I think the third part of that would be trying to keep the morale and passion alive with teachers, administrators, and the community, because the state is constantly changing everything. And we have to keep trying to keep up, because there's always something different. The tests are changing, or the way they want you to do something is changing, or the money's changing. And I think it's not a blame game. It's working together, like Dana said, to try to create the passion and drive to figure out what we can do to best service our kids and make them marketable on a world stage. We want our children, all of us here, I'm sure, to have the best education they can in order to compete on the world stage.
Hamburg's lucky through hard work of its teachers, administrators, and community to not have a common problem that's in education, and that is improving students' test scores. Hamburg ranks 12th as per last year's Business First rankings of West New York school districts. So I would not list improving the way we're educating our students as one of our top 3. I would list one of our biggest concerns, obviously, is finance in our budget, for obvious reasons. Each year, we're receiving less funding, costs are going up, and the funding is going down. So obviously, that's a big concern. The way I would tackle that, I would look at transportation costs, solar energy possibilities, sponsorships, advertisement possibilities, the renting of athletic facilities. I would lobby to the state to increase funding. I would encourage teachers and administrators to write grants. I would be very careful I would try to work with the board to make sure that we are very careful with how we handle all employees to avoid future legal costs and representation against them. Those are some ways I would deal with the finance end. The second, and these are in no particular order, concern that I would list is bullying. Bullying is obviously in vogue right now because of what's happening in Western New York. It's always been a big thing to me in my classes from the beginning that I started teaching 15 years ago. Always been very concerned about my students feeling safe in my classes, students safe in the hallways, and safe everywhere inside the school. So I think it's important that Hamburg develop a bullying policy, which is not like many policies that school districts make and just put on a shelf. It should be followed. Everybody should know what it is. The community should be educated along with the students before we have a tragedy here. And I think our third important issue is uniting the district, the parents, students, the community, the bus drivers, the aides, because there has been in recent years somewhat of a fracturing in Hamburg, unfortunately, and we do need to come together to be successful. So I would say those are the three big issues that I see.
The first issue that comes to my mind, based on my experience with the budget ambassadors, is that we've been budgeting on a basis of year to year. I would like to see a long-range budget program. I would like to see at least a minimum program which would allow us to have more security, more certainty, more continuity within the system. Related to that is my real concern over the security of the staff and the faculty. It was very disturbing for us toward the end of the year to be faced with the realization that faculty and staff were going to be dropped because of finances. This creates a tremendous amount of pressure within the system, and it creates a dysfunction among the various programs, so that are we really going to be able to maintain the quality of a program if we cannot assure ourselves from year to year that we have the resources, particularly the faculty and the staff in place in order to do that. And so that is related. The last item for me that I think is important is that along with this, we're now faced with the responsibility, and this fits in with budgeting, of what are the performance measures that you're going to hold people accountable for. I'm trained in that myself. I was a strategic planner for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's extremely important when you're planning a program for the future. Upon what basis are you going to hold people accountable? What is it you're looking your resources to produce, and go forward with this? And it's going to be a very real challenge for us under the new state regulations regarding the educational programs. How are we going to hold faculty individually accountable for whether or not they're producing what we feel we need? I have a very strong feeling that we want a very, very quality program here, because these students need the opportunity to go forward and have multiple choices. They only get the foundation if we have a solid program from the elementary school on up. And we can only have this if we have the resources well used, we understand why we're doing things, how we're holding people accountable, and the staff and the faculty have some security as we move forward.
Okay, second question, I believe, Holly, and we begin with Holly.
Okay, my question, in developing the 2012-13 district budget, if cuts need to be made, where would you suggest these reductions take place? Are there any areas that you would consider untouchable?
Simple answer on untouchable, no. I think desperate times need desperate measures. I think we're already there in a desperate time. I don't think our general population really understands what that 2% tax cap does. If you just think about it, 90 basis points, which is really what our increase in revenue from our tax levy would be, is not going to carry just keeping things the same. So there are going to have to be, as I see it, there are going to have to be, and I too would echo Harold's comments about, it's terrible to have to get rid of teachers or get rid of staffing or think about getting rid of programs. And when you think about the ones that enrich students' lives, music and sports, and I mean, isn't that why our kids get out of bed in the morning? It's because it's fun to go to school and participate in all these activities. Sure, a learning environment is great, and it's important to have AP classes and special ed help. But we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. And in developing the 12-13 budget, some of the ideas that I would suggest we look at, number one is from an administration standpoint, we have to start thinking about collaborating with other districts. Whether it's in athletics, whether it's in administration, I would love to package that calculus class of the husband and wife team where they were the, down at our
The
board.
Hills.
What's it?
The Hills.
The Hills.
The Hills. How'd you like to take that package and sell it to Orchard Park or Frontier with the success that they have and what they get out of the students compared to other AP companies? It's phenomenal, and I'm glad the board recognized them last year about that. So we gotta start thinking about, being creative, using 21st technology, 21st century technology to help us reduce costs. And that could come in the form of energy savings, consolidation, or collaborating with other districts. But we gotta start reaching out to other districts to collaborate to help us reduce costs and save money, which will in essence save teachers and save programs.
Dan, you're next.
This is a heartbreaking question, I think, but is any place untouchable? I would say no. I don't think that you can just overlook some just because of a title or a name of a committee or anything. I think you have to look everywhere. I know from my experience, my company went through a huge layoff. Our site here in Buffalo went from about 100 to now we're at 20. But at one point, instead of laying people off, they asked everybody to take a 10% pay cut. So everybody, this 20 that were left are still there, and we've actually moved into a mode of hiring. So I think it would take some creativity to come up with some ideas that are maybe outside the box, that people are willing to take a 10% pay cut, then go to the unemployment line. Or maybe they're willing to job share, to split a salary between two people. Talk about opportunities to do part-time work instead of full-time work. Maybe there are some consolidation of hours that will save on energy costs or save on bus routes or all that kind of thing. I don't have specifics because I'm not as familiar with the budget, but I think that there is some real opportunity for creative thinking here that we could really, as a group of board members, parents, teachers, administrators, could really come up with some creative ways to cut costs without cutting quality. Thank you.
Laura, sorry.
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure.
Thank you.
In developing the 2012-13 district budget, cuts need to be made. Where would you suggest these reductions take place? Are there any areas that you would consider untouchable?
I have to say, and I understand the dire times that we're in, and I understand the concept of nothing being untouchable. However, I think special ed and academic intervention, particularly in the elementary school, would be tragic to see those two things done away with. I think that there are some kids who need academic intervention for a few years and they go on and thrive and are AP students, and those are special ed and any kind of academic intervention, particularly in the lower grades, I think would be a downfall to the district if we had to cut them. That being said, obviously, we have some changes that need to be made, and I would really, I like what Dana said about getting creative. One of the best things about Hamburg is the community. I love the community we live in, and if you go to each of these schools and see the volunteers and the passion that people have, I think that there are a lot of ways that we could cut costs by asking for volunteers. We pay a lot of aides to do things, which, I understand that's great, signing in or different things at other schools, that I think there would be people who would love to come in and help out in the school if it meant saving jobs, if it meant not cutting teachers or not cutting programs. And I think if we look at the community as a whole and ask them to get involved, we would find a great deal of interest. And I think we could be very creative in coming up with cutting maybe some fluff from individual schools. I'm not using that word lightly. I'm ways to cut costs.
I feel very strongly about this topic. I feel that past boards have gotten into trouble by maybe not having their thumb on the pulse of the budget of the school district, and that in recent years turning out in a shortfall that the board was unaware of. I feel that the board plays a very important role, and education law dictates that the superintendent serves at the pleasure of the board. So the board has a duty to know exactly what the budget entails, exactly where every dollar goes. So I feel that for each school year, the board should go line by line through the budget to know exactly where every single dollar is going, not groups of expenditures, every single dollar where it's going and where money can be saved. And just like any person's budget, I know in my budget, I could go line by line and save some money. So the district, I'm sure, could save a lot of money if the board went line by line. And that would be what I would work collaboratively, hopefully, with the board to do, to save as much money as possible, to avoid raising taxes, to avoid laying off teachers, and keep programs in place. I can recall as when I was in high school and elementary school, how important sports were to me. If they were cut, it would have changed my whole identity. So and I know other students have a niche in music, or they have a niche in other arts or clubs. So I would try to avoid cutting any of those if possible. Like I said, I would try to go line by line through the budget to find as much money that could be saved as possible. If cuts were necessary, I would try to make them that affect the students the least. So whether it be cell phones for administrators, whatever, what have you, anything that affects the students the least is what I would cut first. Anything that affected a student directly, I would try to avoid at all costs. And I wouldn't say anything is untouchable. I know things are very important, but if there was any area that money could be saved in, then I would say that area, save money in that area. But I would find it my duty as a board member to look at the budget line by line, every single dollar, where it goes, to make the budget secure and feel good about what we're putting out to the community.
This is, I've been sitting here, this is extremely difficult for me because I want to make sure that we have very strong programs in order to prepare the students for a future life. Part of this is the necessity to prepare them in order to enter college if this is their choice, and also to have sufficient courses that allow them to have vocation if this is the alternative that needs to be in place. I think what I would really need to do is to look at the curriculum carefully to determine whether or not everything that's currently being offered is preparing a student for what we think ought to be the end product of the years they have here at Hamburg. Not all of the courses would necessarily be supportive of that in preparing them for the future. So I'd want to look at the curriculum very carefully to see what are the things that seem to jump out, either because they're less able to prepare the student for these options in the future, or they're not getting the enrollment which justifies the particular expenses you might be putting in them. I know one of the things that we went through in the budget the committee this last year, and it wasn't so much we did it as we were being informed about it, is what was happening with the AP classes. In concept, it's wonderful to have AP classes. It's wonderful to say that there are certain students that are quality and therefore should have an enriched program, but are we able to spend money on that at a time when we're really short? And one of the things that did happen, as I remember, some of those AP classes were dropped out because they didn't have sufficient enrollment. If you have a class that only has 5 or 6 students, it's very hard to justify that. I don't really want to see us eliminating the extracurricular activities because this helps the student become more aware of himself. It's also an arena wherein some of this bullying can be brought under control, where students begin to feel secure in doing something and working with other people. I don't really have an answer right now as to what I think is untouchable. I don't really have an answer right now of how I could automatically improve this unless I look very closely at the total curriculum and I said, what is the end product that we really want to have as we go forward? And also along this line, I'd be very, very careful what I did at the elementary level, because I understand, again, from my sister, that they really need a solid education up till their fourth grade. That's when they really get their beginning, and so don't tamper too much with the elementary programs.
Good job.
To the team. All great ideas, folks. The board right here and the candidates here are pretty much, since I'm the runner-up, this the last one to answer this question. Great ideas, desperate times. I agree with one thing, and that is, it's really important, is collaboration outside the districts. I mean, a lot of things, when I lived in Atlanta, and I was a teacher there, when it came to expenditures from everything from pencils to erasers to sports to fielding uniforms, there was a collaboration, and they got discounts on deals. That's a good idea. I like that. I like that, especially when you work together from community to community, because there's a common bond with what has to be done and needed in desperate times. Volunteerism, love that idea. I got a program I put together that I submitted to Principal Jalella from Hamburg Middle School, Helping Hands, getting family members, getting professionals in the community to work on a career subject mode on one night a week in the wintertime, where these kids can actually work, or let's say if they have an interest in a certain field, parents come in. It's been done in Catholic schools, and they don't have any budget. They have nothing. There's no salaries there. The salaries of the teachers are half the salaries of what the teachers are paid here in Hamburg School District. And these people still show up on Fridays and Mondays and Tuesdays, from nights with the gymnasiums to nights with career. These kids get a chance to come in, and guess who's there doing it? The parents. The parents are involved. It's volunteers, getting the community involved. But it comes very simple. If you're gonna develop a budget, it's very simple. The untouchable issues, as far as I can see, the untouchable issues are you don't meddle with teaching salaries. They are the crux, the backbone, the spinal cord of this educational program. They need to be saved. Number two, the way I see it, line by line, just like my gentleman to my right, jump. He's right, line by line. There's a line by line item. You can look at everything you need that's cost worthy or not cost worthy. Where's the fat, where's the meat, where's the potatoes? What do we really need? Line by line. We need to look at that as a board, one by one. And most importantly, why, in God's green earth, why do we have to go outside the district to hire people? I know what's been done here, and that's ridiculous. That would never happen on my watch with the board. The bottom line is we have resources in this community that do it for a fraction of the cost than going outside for consultants or other things that people know, or cronyism, or whatever the case may be, nepotism. That's gone. The bottom line is, where can we save money? Who is the best asset to this community when it can be done in this community? We don't have to go outside. We don't have to spend $400,000 for a consultant to come in and tell us about electrical bills or what we need as far as work around various school districts when it comes to electrical or whatever it needs to be done as far as the actual facts of the matter. The bottom line is, we know we have people right here in this district, or right here in this community, that can take care of it for not even a fraction of the cost. Why not tap that resource? Thank you.
Jane will be first, and I believe Jane does
Okay.
next.
Our next question. How might you work through a situation that has been brought to your attention but has yet to be brought to the attention of school district administrators? Who's our person?
Can you repeat it one more?
How might you work through a situation that has been brought to your attention but has yet to be brought to the attention of the school district administrators? So somebody comes up to you as a school board member, which they do all the time, and say, let me tell you about a problem.
I am big on getting the facts. I'm an engineer at heart, so data is important to me. So I dig into the situation until I understand the story well enough once I understand the story, I feel like I have knowledge, and we can then address the administrator, the parent, whoever, bring all of the people together to really lay out what happened, what the best solution is, what the best way to work it out is, how public of an issue or private of an issue it should be, who else should be involved. I'm sure it involves children, what should be immediate actions to make sure that the children are in a safe and comfortable environment, and then long-term, what can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again. A specific example we went through on my church board is I was a part of a group who was, there was an accusation made, and the board had to make a decision whether to hire this person or not. And it was ugly and really not a pretty situation, but we got through it, and my first question after that was, what do we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because stuff happens, I get it. The best thing you can now do is learn from it and make sure that everybody gets a lesson out of whatever it was that just happened, so that you don't repeat the same mistakes over and over and over and over. Thank you.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question. A community member comes to me and has an issue with something, and I need to respond. Someone in the community or
you become aware of something. and
I
maybe
become
somebody told you.
aware of something, somebody told me
There's a
something.
problem, and you know
Okay.
about it, and the administrators don't know that.
My sense is, it's been a long time since I've been in this kind of arena, is that that's what the board is for, that I would call the president or the board and say, this has come to my attention. I think that maybe we need to have a discussion about it. I don't think I would want to investigate anything on my own, because I think sometimes that's when problems occur and it's he said, she said. I think I would keep it to myself. I would call a board member, I would talk to the board, and then as a whole make a decision about whether or not we needed to go to the administration or whether we needed to take it any further. My feeling is that is what